Oh, it's incredible! Bang on target!
Hello? Okay, why? My wife comes and send a message you. Your face is almost free. Hello? What's happened?
It's a chunk who will be a quiet say what? A dear sir.
We signed for a friend. I'm so here too. My wife is not testing messages here. And our office so I'm still like Diana. She says, I
mean, so we a guy man and may young who could look cry. And also wants a family drilling company limited for Cana.
What's it then? Family Drilling Company Limited.
Ye two borehole, biofuel, biogas, swimming pool, plumbing works in Danso, ye be, Frey 0240-333-111 and NASA 0244-144-822.
Miampa and you want swimming pool, me see. Me want to, we'll be here. Family Drilling now. Family Drilling.
What fast is your last set?
Me out with that shit.
Good morning. Welcome to the Thursday's edition of Good Morning Africa. My name is Kwame Owusu. So today is the 28th of January 2021. This morning we're going to be touching on these topics. Nigeria's president fires armed forces chiefs. Ghanaian Times newspaper reported this one. Stories on page 5 of Ghanaian Times newspaper. Reluctant Democrat Tarzan writes on Accra Jerry John Rawlings. This is on the front page of the Insight newspaper. Mahama finally files his witness statement as Asiedun Ketia others to testify. Akufo-Addo eulogizes Rawlings as he bids him farewell. We're going to marry this story with the second story as written by Tarzan and captured on the front page of the Insight newspaper. I've been joined in the studios by Salisu Biawurbe. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
And Mr. Kwesi Prajuna. Good morning, sir. So we're starting with the African story. Nigeria's president fires armed forces chiefs. Biawurbe, let me start with you. No reasons given, but the suspicion is that they've not been able to deal with the growing insecurity issues raised in Nigeria by many Nigerians in respect of Boko Haram and all the other security issues.
Yes, I think that Nigeria presents a classical example for all West African states to be able to look at the challenges that they are facing internally and to behave in such a way that they can protect the territorial integrity and internal cohesion of the country. Of course, no reasons have been given for the firing, but it is trite knowledge that there's Boko Haram re-emergence within the various parts of Nigeria, and you are aware that there have been some other strife between the cattle herders and indeed local communities, and it's all creating a lot of insecurity within Nigeria. Buhari rode on the back of the fact that he can crush the Boko Haram, and knowing his pedigree as a former military chief who has actually come to office too as well, and he has held the position before, people trusted that he can deal with the insecurity within Nigeria. When they came, they used some tactics of some brute force. People actually were not happy with it, but you saw that indeed the security challenges are re-emerging. And you even recall that they set up a certain anti-robbery squad, which in itself became a huge security issue, and people demonstrated against it, leading to the disbandment of it. But the fact is that who were the creators of the Boko Haram? How did it emerge? The same political turbulence and vigilante groups are the very basis for which the Boko Haram emerged, and now they are out of control, and government upon government, they are finding it difficult to be able to control the Boko Haram group and other armed insurgencies. But he's giving us some leeway that if you give people a certain task that they are not able to perform, you have got the right to fire them. And this is exactly what Buhari is demonstrating in Nigeria. If you mirror it to Ghana, you saw that within our own local territory, we have news that the armed forces that my taxpayer, your taxpayer is using to actually cater for them, they are guiding private enterprises and private organizations. This is not the role of the armed forces. But in Ghana, under Nanado, we are seeing this happening. You are aware that the so-called Galamsey fight that has been waged, through which many people lost their lives, and we have one handsome young military officer, Major Mahama, who ought to pay the ultimate price in the bid to fight the Galamsey. You are aware that indeed there was a whole setup of inter-ministerial task force against Galamsey, and you are equally aware that over 500 or so heavy-duty equipment, especially bulldozers and excavators, vanished. For the first time, we saw that those heavy-duty equipment could have wings to fly, and indeed they did flew. And up to date, the mystery surrounding it is yet uncovered. Only for the president to now come and say that we ought to have a dialogue around it, and all stakeholders might be brought on board, and for him to be able to cure the very disease that he has created. Why is it so? Because the very people who were doing it, the artisanal way that they were doing it, he came and drove them, and now use party structure to be able to go in and take the very size that these people were operating. Obviously, this cannot be acceptable. But we've seen that indeed your sister station had a documentary through which the security were guiding private mining companies deep in the forest, to whom we are even told that they don't have the license to even operate the said mining operations, and by yet we have our country security forces guiding them. This is enough to have fired the Chief of Defense Staff and other command positions within the Ghana Army, because this cannot be accepted in any way, and we should not in any way accept this as a normal situation within the country Ghana. We equally have a situation whereby we have a police chief who is pretending over the Ghana Police Service, so pretended over elections, and 8 people have lost their lives. Some of them were direct killing of the security services. This cannot be accepted. Under proper, responsible governance situation, you get people to take responsibility for whatever happened and decide to resign. If they are not moving, then the one who appointed them can decide to push them aside. So this is a typical example whereby Buhari is giving a clue to his friend Nanado that, look, this is happening within my territory. I cannot accept it. I am firing the various chiefs within the security services. So you can equally do same, because the situation is existing in the country Ghana, unless otherwise the president is known to be endorsing those activities. And of course, I am not surprised, because throughout those things, president has not had the effrontery to condemn unreservedly the situation, especially the election-related violence. And you even had a situation whereby a first deputy speaker of parliament is even alleging that those who cast their vote and they were in to protect their ballot, they didn't want any untoward situation to be done as far as their ballots are concerned, that they were criminals. But the man who shot are not criminals, and for that matter, he doesn't bother about that. This is sad, and this is not the best.
Okay,
indeed,
so we should draw some lessons from Nigeria.
These lessons ought to be drawn, and the best appropriate remedial measures taken to be able to cure these situations.
Thank you. Mr. Pratt, please.
Well, I've read the story, and there are no indications as to why this cannot. But it stands to reason that it may be the result of the growing insecurity in Nigeria. And Nigeria has become very insecure. I mean, only yesterday, there were reports of a kidnapping in the Niger Delta area of oil workers and so on. We do know that there's a low-intensity civil war in the Niger Delta area. We do know about Boko Haram. Recently, some of the lawless elements have managed to breach security even in the capital, Abuja. And it is difficult to understand why this insurgency and level of insecurity has remained, for many years. And this may be the results. This may be the reason why the Nigerian president feels like relieving the army chiefs of their positions. Some of the newspapers today report that it's a very popular move, Maybe it is, But they report that it's a very popular move, and we are hoping that the insecurity in Nigeria at least will be reduced, if not completely eliminated. Because look, Nigeria is the largest, is the most populated country in West Africa. Nigeria has a population in excess of 200 million. Ghana is the second, with only 30 million people. And the movement of Nigerians across West Africa, the West Africa sub-region, suggests that problems in Nigeria can very easily be exported, to other West African countries. I'm hoping that Nigeria would eventually find a way of dealing with its problems of insecurity because they are serious.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. 02608465539 is the WhatsApp number. We're also streaming live on Facebook, facebook.com/Pan-African Television. You can leave your comments underneath the live stream, and we'll try to read the messages here for you. You can also send it to me on Twitter at Kwame Owusu, so I'll read them out. Let's come back home, deal with some of our own internal issues. It appears Tarzan isn't too happy, and so he's issued a statement, sort of, and has described it as reluctant Democrat, and it was captured obviously by the Inside News. My story is on page 3. I've read through that story, but Arabi, let me start with you and pick your thoughts on that first of all. What he tried to do was to look at the transitioning from PNDC to NDC. What happened within that period, and whether or not indeed, when we were being ushered into the Fourth Republic, he played a significant role in that process. Because in his estimation, everything that he did suggested that he never supported a smooth transition from military dictatorship to democratic rule. To the extent that he tried to cow people to submission, there was no press freedom, the judiciary was not functioning properly, etc. And he is saying that he's not disrespecting the thing that he's done, but he's also only trying to set the record straight for people to know that he was not, as has been described by many, the founder of the Fourth Republic of Ghana. Say.
I have mixed feelings with regards to that story. Mixed feelings in the sense that the way and manner we are even positioning the Republic is in itself another issue. Remember that Michael Kui, the former Speaker of Ghana's Parliament, said that indeed the Republic started on the 7th, and for which reason they ought to even remove the 1st July as a Republic Day, and now brought it to 7th January as the Constitutional Day, rechristening the very history of Ghana. Of course, that cannot be true, and anybody who loves history would not agree with that kind of situation. But the fact is that a republican status can only be acquired when you take yourself from a control of a monarch or a certain type of individual who was in charge of affairs, and to gain that level of freedom. And the only time that we have had that opportunity was when we took ourselves from the British Empire and decided to take ourselves off the control of the Queen. And that happened on the 1st of July, 1960. Nobody can take it away from that. Subsequent to that, we have been a republican status, and no other individual has taken control of the country to which everybody is actually subservient to him. That has not happened. And therefore, I can say that we only have one republic We've not had any other second or third or fourth republic. We have got different constitutions because of the type of military adventurism that we have had. And you remember that we had the first military adventurism, which was successful in 1966. We had the second under Achampo, which was successful in 1972. We had a third, which was again successful, because the third actually was an intra-coup between Achampo and Akufu from the same camp. But the other adventurism that we actually had was that of Wallace. When he came in 79, he was successful, handed over to Liman and came back to take Liman. So in my own estimation, I think that we're making a mistake in even saying that this is the fourth Republican Constitution, this is the third Republican Constitution, this is the what Republican Constitution. But it is true that after every military takeover,
there has been a new constitution.
There has been a new constitution. There has not been a restoration of the previous constitution. And if you are a student of constitutional history, you will see the seeming bringing in of certain type of issues just to indemnify the military administration which took over. And that has been a part of our constitutional history. Absolutely. Nobody can take that away from that. I am sure that it is in the spirit of that they have actually brought in new constitutions for every military adventurism and a return to constitutional democracy. You also recall that we have practiced almost every form of government.
Yeah.
We have practiced a parliamentary system of government, which indeed we have seen not to be successful, and we are now practicing that of the presidential system of government with varied interpretations and various shades of the said system of government. So to say that indeed Wallace was a person who was the founder of the fourth constitutional democracy that we have had, I think that it can be true. But the genesis of it was not easy. Thankfully, I am sitting by a legend who I would describe as those who were at the forefront. As a student of law, I've read some cases, some of them criminal cases that they actually took against Kwesi Pratt and the Adubuahin and the rest, all in the pursuit of the press freedom that they needed, all in the pursuit of our return to democratic principles. The journey had not been easy, the journey had not been simple, and many people actually suffered various shades of molestations through that period. Mm-hmm. But be as it is, Wallace and his administration can also be credited for accepting at the end of the day to return to constitutional democracy. They can also be credited for bringing in a system whereby we can have a sustained democratic administration for a certain long time. Mm-hmm. Of course, objectively, you can criticize General Wallace for the 1981 coup because there was a democratic administration and he came and toppled that democratic administration. You can laud him for 1979 coup because he came to remove a military administration and return the country to a democratic rule. But even with that, objectively, there was a process set in motion for our return to constitutional democracy. That notwithstanding, he came and he accepted within a short time, left off and gave it to Liman. Of course, there can be several justifications for any coup which comes. And being a person of the NDC tradition, obviously we do justify certain things, but as an administrative, as a purely intellectual issue, I think that whatever justification you are staging for a coup to remove a democratic administration, that can also be justified at any material moment in time. It is better we use the multi-party way of trying to remove people out of office than the military adventurism that had happened. So in the light of that, one would agree that, look, at the point Wallace was not so much into, and until his death, despite the fact that he has won democratic elections, he still has certain issues with regards to a certain type of democracy that we are practicing. And he didn't hide it, he had made it open, but yet accepted the various tenets. Listening to the very history and being part of the history of the 1982 Republican Constitution that we have had, you can agree that, look, the journey had not been easy. It was tough, and many people played their part. And for that matter, you can say that Tarzan had a point. But to just say that, look, Jerry John Rawlings did not really play a strong part, I beg to differ. And the reason is simple. We have his compatriots in Togo. We had his compatriots in Cote d'Ivoire. And when we were developing the new constitution, we could have decided not to put a presidential term limit. And when you don't put a presidential term limit, it means that the sitting president can decide to go, and so far as the people are popular. Remember that he had a certain military background, and he had a military architecture which was supportive of the administration of Rawlings, and which military architecture we have inherited as NDC by the revolutionary organs which were set in the past under the military administration, and we have taken them on as a party, even though we have transitioned to a democratic culture. And if indeed President Rawlings was to behave like how Akufo-Addo is behaving today, of course, he could have been a president up to date and to die in office as he passed on. But of course, he accepted the structure, and when his time was due, he easily went out of office. His compatriots, even after drawing up their constitutions and setting a time limit, when their time was getting closer, they decided to go for constitutional amendments. You saw for Nyasimbe Yadama of Togo what he has done. Abdraman Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire. Nobody thought that Abdraman Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire would have done what he has done today and to win another presidential term in office. We've just seen what is happening in Burundi, Uganda, and the rest, and all the elections which went out there. So it is true that Rawlings played a critical part. Nobody can take it out of him. He personally might have his own flaws, but the entirety of the administration and the people that he worked with all came to accept that we ought to return the country to a democratic culture and to have this sustained, long-lasting democratic practice in the country. You can't take that credit off Jerry John Rawlings and the people that he worked with.
Okay, I'll come back to you again, because his article is predicated on some articles in the Constitution, which articles, in his estimation, supported the dictatorial ideas of J.J. Rawlings. And I'll come to that after Mr. Pratt's submission.
Well, it seems to me that the real problem is the general hypocrisy, of politicians in Ghana. It seems to me that the real problem is that our politicians are so dishonest. It's unbelievable. And that's the real problem. It is for that reason that I would want to commend Dr. Charles Brobe for being able to stand up and say his mind in spite of the atmosphere and in spite of pressures on him and so on. First of all, I agree with my friend and comrade here that this whole idea of a second and third and fourth republic is repulsive in the extreme. Because since 1st July 1960, Ghana has never lost its republican status.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even when there have been coup d'etats, we've still been a republic, And this whole idea, I don't know where it's coming from, of a second and third and fourth republic, I don't know where it's coming from. It simply doesn't make sense. We've had one republican status which has never been lost. You understand? So that's the first problem. Now, the second problem is just simply the fact that we always twist the facts and so on. Last year, I'm talking about 2020, just a few months ago, Mr. Rawlings granted an interview to Asase FM in which he stated clearly that he was not in favor of return to constitutional rule.
Now watch that interview.
Now he says, I'm not the one saying it, Mr. Rawlings says that he was not in favor of return to constitutional rule. Couple of months ago. So how does he become the founder, the initiator of constitutional rule when he was so opposed to it? Look, I think that all of these statements and so on are an insult to the memory of the gallant men and women of Ghana who laid down their lives and struggled to establish constitutional rule. I mean, look, somebody like Professor Dubois, he must be written in his grave. You understand? John Wilson, Obi Memu, and so on, they must be crying in their graves when they hear these kinds of statements. Look at somebody like Akutompao, Professor Kwame Kakari, Yao Graham, Johnny Debugri, and so on, who actually suffered detention without trial, and in some cases torture and so on, to bring about constitutional rule. How do you think they're going to feel today? When we give the credit to the very person who was imprisoning them, who was torturing them, and so on, because they were advocating for constitutional rule. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? 2 days ago, I listened to an interview which was granted by one of the friends of Mr. Rawlings, to one of the radio stations in Accra. And I'm talking about Riyadh. And Riyadh actually confesses that at a certain point, they planned to kill Kukuba. And what was the reason for wanting to kill Kukuba? Because he was critical of Rawlings. How can people like this be credited with nurturing or fostering democracy in our country? People who are planning to kill people because they were critical. And this is fresh. This is about 2 days ago. Fresh. I can't believe this. Yes, for some people, Mr. Rawlings may have been their inspirer. For some people, Mr. Rawlings may have been the founder of their political party and so on. Let them stick to that and let them stop insulting all of us. You understand? I watched the tributes yesterday and I listened to Alhaji Hudu Yaya.
Yes.
And I felt like crying. I mean, Hudu is my comrade and friend. You understand? I have a great deal of respect for Alhaji Hudu Yaya. But when I saw him yesterday saying that Mr. Rawlings' rule brought down inflation, created unemployment, and revived the economy, I said, my goodness, where is Hudu coming from? Where is Hudu coming from? Check the facts. The facts tell us that at the time Mr. Rawlings exited office in 2000, the rate of inflation was in excess of 40%. The rate of inflation was in excess of 40% by 2000. Money supply had gone up at that time by more than 50% and so on. Check the records. In 1983, as many as 300,000 workers lost their jobs as a result of the implementation of the retrenchment exercise advocated by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. 300,000 workers lost their jobs. Look at the spate of privatization. Between 1982 and the year 1992, we have privatized close to 400 state enterprises. Look at the enterprises who collapsed under Mr. Rawlings. My brother, before, under Nkrumah, we established industries under the import substitution program. These industries produced matches, they produce matches, they produce refrigerators and deep freezers, wireless sets, and so on. They produce so much to cut our dependence on the colonial metropolis and so on. Where are all these industries? The Bongatanga Meat Factory, mention them. All of them were privatized. None of them survived privatization. All of them collapsed. Which shows that privatization was a bad deal for the people of Ghana. The genesis of our economic collapse and suffering is PNDC rule. You understand? So I'm totally shocked. When persons who know the facts, persons with intellectual capacity to analyze the situation, to tell us the truth, come and tell us all these cock and bull stories. And what is the purpose? Why can't they face reality? You know, yesterday, President Akufo-Addo took a few steps back from what he has been doing over the last 4 years. President Akufo-Addo is not substantially different from Alhaji Hudu when it comes to the discussion of the Rawlings era. Me, I was shocked to the marrow when I saw a video footage of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo when he was then an MPP presidential candidate going to the house of Mr. Rawlings and proclaiming that he had always been inspired by Mr. Rawlings. His politics had always been inspired by Mr. Rawlings. I said, what the hell is happening? Am I dreaming? Mr. Akufo-Addo, His Excellency the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, was the one who chaired the committee which wrote the stolen verdict in 1992. Go and read the stolen verdict in 1992. And what he said about Mr. Rawlings and the PNDC. Today, Mr. Rawlings is his inspirer. Why? But I think that a lot of people have spoken to him. He's beginning to see that he's turning history upside down. So what did he do? Yesterday, he put a distance between himself and Mr. Rawlings and said, well, he's always had disagreements with him. They've not always seen eye to eye and so on, making an attempt to retreat from previous positions that he had taken. You understand? I mean, look, please, we should be careful what we say and what we do. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was one of the leaders of the Kumipreku demonstration. At the end of the day, people died, including a school child, Ahunu Honda. Let's respect Ahunu Honda's memory. So what are you going to say to the family of Ahunu Honda if you turn around today and say that he was your inspirer, he inspired all your political actions and so on? This double talk, this cheap populism, this deliberate effort to run away from the truth, to turn the truth upside down and so on, is not in the interest of our country. Because if you don't understand your history, if your history is misrepresented, if your history is turned upside down, how do you then move into the future? You understand? Even this whole business about Mr. Rawlings being the founder of the NDC, the true story must be told. We were all in this country when supporters of Mr. Rawlings attacked those who were trying to build the National Democratic Congress and beat them to us. There were injuries and so on. The original party that Mr. Rawlings joined was the Eagle Party, which was then led by Daniel Forieta and people like Michael Susudis and so on. They formed the Eagle Party. That was Mr. Rawlings' party. Mr. Rawlings was never a founding member of the National Democratic Congress. The National Democratic Congress was founded by cadres like Bizi Tando, like Tutri Poku, like Sangama, and so on. In about 1991-92, had its founder declared after 2000 or thereabout. Isn't it interesting? Let's stop the hypocrisy and move on and build the country. There's a country to build. There are so many problems confronting this country. You understand? As we sit, the reports we are hearing about the coronavirus and the havoc it's causing in our country should worry all of us. Now, everybody knows somebody who has died from coronavirus. Yeah. Direct, your friend, your aunt, your uncle, your brother, and so on. You all know them. Yesterday, 2 people that I'm very close to also died from COVID-19. It is spreading. The official statistics are unreliable. Why? People go to the hospital, we are being told that all our hospitals are full. It is difficult to find a bed for COVID-19 patients. There's one case in which somebody died in one of the biggest hospitals in this country because oxygen was not available. My own brother died. Perhaps if he had had early access to a ventilator, he would have been alive. And we're here playing childish politics of who founded the Fourth Republic, the non-existent Fourth Republic and so on. Childish politics. What is wrong with us? Let's focus on the principal issues that confront us today. Look, as we sit here, very soon, if our government does not act expeditiously, we'll be back to do so. Yeah. Very soon we'll be back to do so. Let's think, let's act. Let's build our country. You understand? Look at what is happening with the reopening of schools again and the COVID and so on. I'm sure we're all hearing the stories. One of the stories which I heard, which was so alarming, I mean so unnerving, was a little child who went to school in a face mask and came back home with a different face mask. And the parents asked, but what happened to the face mask we gave you? And the little child said, oh, I exchanged it with my best friend. Innocent child. Innocent child. At some ages, the children cannot act on their own to prevent infections and so on. And that is why they need a certain level of guidance. That is why the state has to protect them and so on. We've allowed these little children to go to school and so on, they are exchanging face masks with their best friends and so on. What is wrong with this country? I am deeply worried by the state of our country and its future.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. 0260846539 is the WhatsApp number. We're streaming live on Facebook. Share with us what your thoughts are. We'll read them out. Because of time, for want of time, we cannot, go back and discuss this issue. So let's move on and discuss what is happening, what is going to happen in court today. And we shall bring you proceedings from court here on Pan-African Television at exactly 9:30. So you may want to still stay with us if you want to follow proceedings in court. Mahama finally files his witness statement. I see Dunketia others testify. Sir, please.
Yes. I think that we are seeing very interesting legal education with regards to the Supreme Court case. To begin with, all things being equal, they may start the real hearing of the case today.
Absolutely, yeah.
But from what I know, and based on the motions which are pending, to which they are yet to take them, I doubt whether they would really start the hearings today, because per the normal court practice, when you have some of the motions, they would like to take those motions first. And depending on the time that is available, they may go into the substantive issue. But the critical issue which is at stake is a decision on the judgment of the said Supreme Court, for which NDC is seeking to review the judgment of the Supreme Court. And what was the judgment? They refused to grant NDC to actually serve interrogatories on the Electoral Commission. And in their refusal to grant, they actually gave the reasons for which they are refusing as the questions not being relevant. As well, the very CI 47, as amended, that the NDC legal team relied on as a supplement to CI 16 and CI 99. And when I say CI 16, CI 16 is a procedural law governing the Supreme Court, which had been amended twice. And one of the amendments for which election petition is related is that of the CI 99. But the CI 99 and CI 16 is woefully inadequate to be able to guide all practices in the superior courts. So there is a precedent which the NDC did cite, and that precedent was the 2013 election petition, to which indeed there was a ruling that some of the very practices of the courts to which had not been provided in the Supreme Court, like interrogatories, discoveries, and the rest, you can use the procedure as set up in the High Court, and which has been supported by the Constitution. So when this judgment came, the NDC realized that no, we ought to review this judgment. Remember that the judgment of the Supreme Court has a binding force of law by the precedent that they set on other lower courts. So by so doing, it means that NDC is seeking not just to serve the interrogators, but to serve the judicial process such that we will have a very strong decision which has got a binding force of law down to the others. And on the basis of that, it is the belief of the NDC that when the Electoral Commission, which has been denied the answering of the interrogatories, if the decision of review now grants the NDC to serve them the interrogatories, obviously they need time to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And NDC has also gone ahead to serve the Electoral Commission to admit certain facts, which facts has not been admitted. The facts have not been admitted for now. There are three different things. One, interrogatories is just questions.
Of course, yeah.
To the party. You can also, per the procedure, ask the very party which is responsible to admit to certain facts that you have stated, and which facts NDC has said on the Electoral Commission. Electoral Commission has not responded on that. But it was the belief of the NDC that by virtue of the fact that we have a review pending, and by virtue of the fact that the outcome of the said decision of the review can prejudice or may actually affect the type of witness statement that we are going to file, then there was no need for us to file a witness statement. For which the NDC went ahead to actually ask for a stay of proceedings, and which is granted by law. So when you hear people who obviously know, or they ought to know, that indeed the stay of proceedings was filed, and that NDC is asking for review, and NDC is going to serve interrogatories, and they've actually served statements for the Electoral Commission to admit facts. And on the basis of this, they are saying that NDC is not really going by the time, and they want to waste time and the rest, or delay the trial process. Then you laugh. Why? Because they know that that is the normal process. Nothing done by the NDC-led legal team is out of the law. And the judges even acknowledge some of them, and they know that. So on the basis of that, we were compelled to actually give a witness statement. And when we say two witnesses statement had been provided, and when I say witness statement, or when they say witness statement, it means what the very person who is your witness is coming to testify. That is what he has done on a written paper and served to the court. So it takes off the issue of the person leading the person in evidence in chief before cross-examination. So it means that somebody who has testified may be cross-examined by the opposing party, but will not be led into evidence in chief by the counsel who is inviting the said person. So we initially said that we are going to provide 5 witnesses, and we are giving 2. And that is also accepted. You must give the court a notice that this is the number of witnesses I'm going to actually invite. And in the legal parlance, witnesses are weighed but not counted. Absolutely. So it doesn't matter whether you are bringing 30 or 40 or 50 witnesses. It is the weight of their testimonies that will be decided. Absolutely. So if you look at the witness statement by Johnson Sedin Ketia, you realize that it's a master-crafted witness statement. And any student of law ought to read the type of drafting of the witness statement to guide all of us into the future. It is stating that on the basis of the fact that there are pending issues, interrogatories, admission of facts, and the rest, these are the witness statements that he is actually giving. But if indeed the responses come or they are refused, he may come again to give additional witness statements with regards to it. And if you read that of Professor White's witness statement, you realize that NDC has a solid ground for which we have gone to court. And we are using the statistics of just the electoral commissioner. Because how can you, as electoral commissioner, give different results for the same election which has been held for the parties concerned? Yeah. This is the crux of the issue.
Very well. Thank you. Nicely done. Mr. Pratt.
Well, I, because of my background and so on, I like to dwell a little on style of reporting and the kinds of headlines that the media is giving to the proceedings in the Supreme Court. files witness statements, it suggests a delay.
Of course, yeah.
You understand?
Yeah, yes.
And it feeds into that whole propaganda that the petitioner's legal team is playing some games with the Supreme Court. You understand? As far as I'm concerned, there has been no delay. The filing of witness statements yesterday does not infringe upon any law. There's no delays. It's the court process and so on. So these little nuances and so on have a tendency to shape people's opinions about the proceedings in the Supreme Court. And it gets worse when lawyers, stand in court and deliberately feed into the propaganda outside the courtroom and so on. You understand? In strict sense, and so on, these maneuverings and propaganda and so on may fit into contempt. If the understanding of contempt is right, anything which is done in order to prejudice the case before the court amounts to contempt. And some of these things are very, very prejudicial, you understand? So those of us who are reading and listening and watching material from the media should be alert. Otherwise, we'll be misled. We'll be misled by headlines, we'll be misled by slants and so on. You understand? So we should focus on the essential elements. 2 witness statements were filed yesterday. One by Percy White, who was the representative of former President Mahama in the strong room, along with Radio Mentil Munu. And the other one was filed by Mr. Johnson Asidu Nketia, who is the General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress. The courts will look at these statements and make their own determinations and so on. But yesterday I found the 2 witness statements very interesting. I mean, I read them before I slept yesterday, and I found them exceedingly interesting. I would not make any comments beyond that, you understand? Because I'm mindful of the need to be cautious, the need not to feed into the propaganda outside the court and so on, Let the judges take their time, look at the legal issues and make a determination. I do hope that the judges, however, would recognize the huge responsibility that has been placed on their shoulders. These judges sitting on this case are acting on behalf of the 30 million people of Ghana. And that should not be lost on them. You understand? Because we cannot erect a mechanism which would enable all 30 million of us to determine the case. That is why we have, through the enactment of a constitution and all kinds of provisions and so on, set up a Supreme Court which more or less is the final arbiter in these disputes. The court must recognize that it speaks for all of us, and that justice also needs to be seen to be done. I mean, there's a maxim in law which says that justice must not just be done, but it must be seen to be done. The elements that go into making justice seen to be done are matters that I'm sure that the lawyers before the court and the Supreme Court itself is fully conscious of. We are waiting.
We are waiting. Mr. Pratt, the lawyer. I like that. Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. I think because we have to go to the Supreme Court, we need to end the show here. Thank you, Mr. Pratt, very much for your time. Thank you, Biarebi, for honoring our invitation. Thank you to you, the viewers, for watching today's edition of... Yes.
I don't know if this is the appropriate forum, but I think it's important for all the viewers of Pan-African television to know that we have been served with a court order to release the video recording of Alhaji Inusa Fuseni about the comments he made on Alhaji and Alhaji, for which the police CID invited him. And we've complied with the court order. 2 days ago, we gave that video recording to the Criminal Investigations Department. So we've done our part, you understand? Whatever they want to do with the video is up to them. But we were served with a court order and we're under obligation to surrender the video. And we have done that. And then, Kwame, if you permit me,
yes, sir.
You know, I don't do this,
Yes,
but
sir.
if you permit me, this is a very peculiar situation. Nanabin Otu Pratt, former lecturer at Jimpa, will finally be laid to rest on February 3rd, which is next Wednesday. It will be a private burial, but there will be a burial service at the Red Church, where he normally goes to church, you know, and filing past the body will start at 8:30 a.m. and the burial service